Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another discussion with Rumination with Andrew, a very important topic that we shall be discussing this afternoon. Now, the title of my conversation is going to be wiretapping in um not in Brazil but in Barbados, and we will be joined another time by or with Fred Corbin. In this explosive discussion with Fred Corbin, we'll reveal how Mia Mottley is tightening control over Barbados, raising questions about surveillance and authoritarian tactics. Fred Corbin explains the wiretapping practices and what this means, not just for Barbados, but for Jamaica, Guyana, Haiti, and the wider Caribbean. And this is also a follow-up, conversation that I have been having with Mr. Corbin in as it relates to matters that affect the Caribbean region. So our specific title is Mia Mottley's Authoritarian Barbados. What Jamaica, Guyana, and Haiti must know. It's very important that we understand that. So Mr. Corbin is going to join us again. So I'm going to let Mr. Corbin in at the moment. Mr. Corbin? Hello, good evening, Mr. Corbin.
Hello, good evening. How are you?
Yes, doing very well, thank you. And welcome back to another session with Rumination with Andrew. Mr. Corbin has joined us again in yet another podcast, this time to speak about the growth of a surveillance and police state in Barbados. Mia Mottley, a climate change czar and climate change advocate, is pushing wiretapping laws to formalize the surveillance of citizens' conversations via their phones, computers, or vis-a-vis any technological gadget. Mr. Corbin is a native of Barbados, an engineer by profession, historian, podcaster, and an astute political commentator who loves freedom. He will now join us to enlighten us regarding the events unfolding in Barbados as regards wiretapping laws, the implication for Barbadians, and the possible spillover effects in the wider Caribbean. So, Mr. Corbin, let's begin with Miss Mia Mottley's Barbados. Now, there are people on the program who might not have heard of Mia Mottley. Who is Mia Mottley, and can you give us a brief biographical sketch with regard to Miss Mottley's rise in Barbadian politics as well as globally?
Well, first of all, you'd have to ask our audience, do they want the diplomatic version or do they want the Fred Corbin version?
We want the full version, Mister, because that's what that we're here for the truth.
Okay. Okay, so let's start with the diplomatic version first
Yeah.
because we want to be um bipartisan in our approach with regard to what the truth is.
Yes.
So, Miss Motley basically is a groomed individual from very early age. From secondary school, she was already being groomed for this role. And her father, Elliot Motley, um, was and has been the Queen's and King's emissary to Barbados for many years. So, having and just as a point of fact, um, Mia Motley's father, Mr. Elliot Motley, was actually my dad's lawyer.
Oh.
And the Prime Minister of Barbados at the time, the Right Honorable Errol Walton Barrow, used to come to my dad's house and sit with Mr. Motley and discuss the forward planning for the draft legislation that was currently being put in place for beachfront hotel development properties in Barbados. My father was a very astute real estate dealer as well as an agent, and he was very instrumental in putting the legislation in place and drafting certain documentation that is currently used today. As a side note, sometimes Miss Motley used to accompany her father to my parents' house and so on, but she was always a very aloof individual
Yes.
and never interacted with any of us. I guess we were probably too rambunctious for her, but at the end of the day, she is a groomed individual for this particular role of Prime Minister of Barbados, as well as transnational coordinator of the World Economic Forum, of which she's an alumni. She's also a member of the Club of Rome, which was
Yes.
the founder of the criminal fraud of the global climate crisis. As and she sits on the board of the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the Caribbean Development Bank in many different perspectives as it pertains to development across the Caribbean. She rose rapidly through the ranks of the Barbados Labour Party, first being Minister of Education and then Attorney General, and then on to the current role as she is right now of Prime Minister of Barbados in 2018, and then being reselected in 2022 to lead the Barbados Labour Party on the current trajectory of destruction of this country.
Now, Mr. Corbin, could you explain the wiretapping laws in Barbados? Have they been passed in Parliament yet? And in sum, what do these wiretapping laws entail?
Well, the wiretapping, or the what's known as the communication or the interception of communications bill, has been passed in Parliament, and as Miss they put it in the words of Miss Mottley, there is no longer any room for discussion. That's it.
Hmm.
That's what she told the Parliament of the country. It's a done deal, and we also have to remember that this has had a very long history.
Yes.
Okay, this the implementation of the Interception of Communications Bill has had a very long history and gestation over probably 2 to 3 years.
Mhm.
And I think that the key points that we have to remember is that this is not only about the interception of communications in order to control a criminal element. That's just a side note. But the main and most important avenue that the interception of communications will entail is the control of the banking sector.
Yes.
Simply because in order to fulfill the instructions and the mandates of the World Economic Forum, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the dystopian United Nations one world government, you
Yes.
have to control three very important things, and that is money, food, and water.
Mhm.
She now controls all three for Barbados. The Trident digital ID that was rolled out, where a large percentage of Barbadians have taken the digital ID and they don't understand the implications, even although we have spent many long hours of broadcasts on this particular issue, is that the digital ID is designed to control the mechanism of populations. And when I say the mechanism of populations, the mechanism of a population is its ability to be employed, its ability to buy food, its ability to live a life of comfort as well as happiness, and to be a progressive society towards the contribution to the economy of the nation in which they live.
Mhm.
What we have in Barbados is that we have the complete disconnection, total disconnection of the judiciary, the executive branch of government, the medical, as well as the prison service. And the reason that all four of those have been disconnected from society is because they are all under one heading. And that happened in February of 2020 when the Constitution of Barbados was suspended on the 5th of February 2020 by the Attorney General Dale Marshall when
Mhm.
he stood in Parliament and announced to the Barbadian public that the World Health Organization
Mhm.
had announced a medical emergency of international concern. Upon the declaration of a medical emergency of international concern, 196 countries lost their national sovereignty. Boom, done.
Wow.
Why? Why did this happen? This happened because 196 countries had signed the 2005 World Health Regulations put in place by the World Health Organization, and written into the language of that agreement was, upon the declaration of a medical emergency of international concern, total martial law will be declared at the expense of the suspension of the Constitution. This is an act of treason. And
Mhm.
every single attorney general that proclaimed that within their respective parliaments committed an act of constitutional treason. We do not have an active constitution in Barbados and far less the other Caribbean regions.
Yes.
This is
That,
this is something this
yeah,
is
go ahead.
something that is this is something that is hotly and highly debated across the Caribbean region, with lots of scholars and lots of learned individuals saying that it's not true and this and that and so on. And I always ask the question, if there is an active constitution in the Caribbean, and any one of the Caribbean nations, why are we having this conversation?
Yes. Yes. You know, one of the things, I was talking to Marcia Weeks, and she was saying that, there is a constitution, but there is not a Republican constitution. And I was asking her, what does she mean by that? Because we either have a constitution or we don't. What do you say to that?
I am I am highly respectful of Lady Marcia.
Yes.
I she has been someone that I highly regard with regard to her work in the Caribbean region.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, I cannot agree with her because, as you have quite rightly said, we either have a constitution or we don't. And
Right.
the reason that we don't have a constitution is that the independence order
Mm-hmm.
of the Barbados Constitution has been removed with the
Yes.
formation of a illegal and illegitimate republic,
Mm-hmm.
because the republic that is currently in place in Barbados, or the facade of a republic that is currently in place in Barbados, was introduced without referendum,
Yes.
without parliamentary education,
Mm-hmm.
without the judiciary educating a constitution to the republic, and
Yes.
without amendments for a republic to the constitution, even if there was one. The
And
entire operation,
could you also explain that Barbados does not have a functional opposition because she controls all the major seats in parliament, isn't that so? All
well,
36?
that is correct. And the reason that is so is that the she sent one of her she sent one of her people across the floor from her party to the other party in order to give the impression that there was a democratic process in place.
Mm-hmm.
And the leader of the opposition has successfully destroyed the opposition party,
Mm-hmm.
and is carrying out or jumping through the hoops in order to maintain a facade of an opposition. There
Mm-hmm.
is no opposition.
Correct.
Okay, let's be very clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
Barbados does not have an opposition. What you
Mm-hmm.
have are meddlers in a so-called democratic facade
Mm-hmm.
that gives the public the impression that there is a Democratic Party on the other side of the floor.
Yes.
That is not the case. What
Yes.
we do have, we have one set of confusion that is being manipulated in the best interest of the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we have. And the most important thing for every single Caribbean national to recognize is that this is something that can happen in your country as well.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm just in a context here, Fred. In the St. Kitts and Nevis Observer, there's an article published on, I think it was June 25th. It says that Prime Minister Mia Mottley says her government will take stronger action to fight crime, especially after recent violent attacks on older people. She's calling for a whole of nation approach, meaning everyone, not just police, should help tackle the problem. She announced that the Barbados Police Service and the Barbados Defense Force will keep doing joint patrols for another year. These patrols will now cover even more serious issues. The aim is to reduce fear and help the police as they patrol communities. So is this wiretapping, is it related to the whole matter of reducing crime in Barbados?
That is one of the avenues that has been touted, but we have to understand one thing very clearly. And this
Mhm.
gets back to where I said that this has a long gestation period
Yes.
of over 2 years. And there are two very important things to know about the crime situation in Barbados.
Mhm.
Number one, the current crime situation is a state-sponsored phenomenon due to
Yes.
Barbados being an IMF captured state.
Yes.
And that is whereby the terms and conditions of most of the IMF loans, or so-called loans, contain security benchmarks of achievement.
Yes.
And the crew in charge, which is the crew in charge of the so-called government,
Mm-hmm.
must accomplish these benchmarks by certain time frames. So hence
Yes.
you have the cybercrime bill, you have the tint laws, you have
Mm-hmm.
CCTV surveillance, you
Mm-hmm.
have the interception of communications and so on,
Mm-hmm.
which includes eradication of gang culture and any modicum of potential resistance to a totalitarian authority by the government.
Yes.
Number two, the World Health Organization issued a global directive in 2022 to all member nations that violent crime is a public health concern or a public health issue. Now, that statement was actually the green light given to all governments and IMF-sponsored proxy actors to engage in criminal activities,
Mm-hmm.
and with the full knowledge and the support of law enforcement intelligence operations.
Mm-hmm.
How else could you explain that you can build a Hegelian dialectic around crime in order to usher in exactly what we're now seeing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, again, this happened against the public of every single country. All right.
Yes.
And it followed the, directly supported the WHO UN mandates of sustainable development in implementing basically global control of populations through three very important things: fear, confusion, and
Mm-hmm.
terror, domestic terror. And they all started right here in the Caribbean with the visit to the Caribbean region at the Caribbean Heads of Government Summit that was held on June 8th in 2023 in Nassau, Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris,
Yes.
basically outlined that this would be the case.
The
And
agenda.
I quote, and I'm reading directly from the transcript of her speech.
Yeah.
Listen to this carefully. I am pleased to announce that the United States Department of Justice will create a new position, a coordinator for Caribbean firearms prosecutions, which will
Mm-hmm.
help maximize information sharing between our countries to support the prosecution of traffickers.
Mm.
This effort will be aided by the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which President Biden signed last year,
Yes.
and includes a new federal criminal offenses for firearms trafficking and straw purchases. In addition, through the U.S. law enforcement agencies, we are supporting a recently established Caribbean Crime Gun Intelligence Unit in Trinidad and Tobago to
Mhm.
train officials in firearms investigations and help bring criminals to justice.
Yes.
Okay? That entire three paragraphs was the code to the proxy actors in the Caribbean region to begin criminal activity on an unprecedented scale.
Yeah.
Immediately, within 10 days following that Caribbean Heads of Summit, that Caribbean Heads of Summit meeting,
Mm-hmm.
or Heads of Government Summit meeting, crime went off the scale in the
Wow.
Caribbean region.
Wow.
Went off the scale.
So
Now, what is
why is Jamaica saying that they have had a 30% reduction in crime since what's his name? That's Dr. Andrew Holness's quest for a third term in office. He's now suggesting that he has reduced crime 30%.
well, there's a very important video that the public should watch, a YouTube video which highlights the former head of national security, who is now the current Washington
Ambassador.
D.C. ambassador.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And coming from a military background and so on
Yes.
and so forth, he put special implementation tactics in place with regard to powers of certain emergency powers, as well as states of emergency in the hot spots on the areas, and utilizing the military in very close coordination of tactics and strategies in certain areas of Jamaica. This had a very, very fundamental effect on reducing crime in Jamaica. But this happened unilaterally by the Jamaica government simply because Jamaica had already been notified by the United States State Department that they would be one of the focus countries for the new incoming administration.
And Anthony Anderson had an interview with the Gleaner
Yep,
sometimes before he went to Washington, in which he was saying that the IMF, that was a part of the IMF agreement, the whole
there
matter
you
of the
go.
sustained benchmark.
As I
Another
just
thing
said,
I would like to ask, though, Fred, before you talk, is the fact that Anthony Anderson and Dr. Andrew Holness from 2016 to 2024, when they were in office, crime was still off the hook. We had many states of emergency and it
Mhm.
was not solved. Why then, now that he's now on a quest for a third term in office, last year in November 2024, we are hearing that crime has been reduced. So is this just mere propaganda?
No, it's not. It's not mere propaganda. Crime has been reduced simply because the state is no longer sponsoring it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to remember that the state sponsors crime based upon the instructions given from the external controllers of Jamaica and the Caribbean.
yes. Mm,
Remember that Jamaica is a focus country of the United States administration of the Donald Trump
yes,
administration.
yes,
So is Guyana and so is Trinidad. Look at the recent election in Trinidad. A
yes.
landslide victory in Trinidad. The United States of America just signing new ExxonMobil deals worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And Guyana already on the cusp of a development progress agenda that will see the country become the Singapore of the Caribbean in a very short space of time.
But
These are
Andrew
the
Holmes
three.
is saying the same thing about Jamaica.
Of course, yes. Well, that's actually true because
Right.
Jamaica has a better opportunity of becoming the Singapore of the Caribbean simply because
Mm.
of its geographical location.
Yes,
And the most important thing we have to remember is that under the United States hegemony, which we have mentioned many times on this particular platform, is
yes,
that we understand the interests that the United States administration has in the Caribbean. And the reason that crime has not been reduced in the Caribbean is because the United States of America has no interest in Barbados.
mm,
And the Prime Minister of Barbados has been kicked to the curb by the Donald Trump administration. So, in order to double down on the European control of the justice system in the Caribbean region, the Prime Minister of Barbados is doubling down on that. And I'll tell you the reason why that is happening.
mhm,
The reason that that is happening is because in July of actually in October of 2023,
mhm,
the Caribbean region signed what is known as the PACE Justice Program.
mm,
Okay? PACE Justice, the Partnership of the Caribbean and European Union on Justice.
mhm,
And there are 8 member countries of that organization, which is Antigua, Barbados, Dominica, um, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guyana, Grenada, St. Lucia, and Trinidad. Those 8 countries do not represent the entire Caribbean region. And when this agreement was signed, the current administration in Trinidad was not in power. So
yes,
now it's down to 7.
mhm,
Okay? It's down to 7. And you can see what is happening in those other 7 countries. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed other than in Guyana. So it's down to 6. Okay? So there's 6 countries left that are still towing the line of the Biden administration European Union dystopia. And why is this happening? Because in October of 2023, the Needham's Point Declaration was signed right here in Barbados. Okay? And that was a formation and an idea of the Prime Minister of Barbados,
let me ask you
which
something, Fred.
well,
Yeah,
hang
well,
on one
go
second,
ahead, go
one
ahead.
second. Let me
Yeah.
explain this.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
reason that the Needham's Point Declaration was put in place
Yes.
was in order for the European Union to be able to implement
Mhm,
the same criminal justice reform as well as the entire justice system of
mhm.
the United Nations in Europe here into the Caribbean region.
Yes.
And the reason for that being signed here in Barbados was that in the following year of 2 years later, in February of 2025, the EU Commissioner, Ursula von der Leyen, came to Barbados in order to
Mhm,
be able to sign off on organizations and memorandums of understanding that support that.
mhm,
Okay. Not
mhm,
only that, but this was put in place at a behest and as a confirmation of the
mhm.
World Health Organization that crime is a public health emergency.
Yes, 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 exactly so. Now, Fred, one would have thought that Barbados, which had a very close relation, well, we can say a special relationship with England for, throughout the years, much better than Jamaica did and all of the other colonies, Why is it that England would have given up Barbados as her special child and said, "Oh, go and become a Republican state," even though we know that it's a full Republican state? But why do you think she would not cuddle it and say, "I'm protecting her from U.S. machinations"?
That is a very good question, Andrew. But the truth is this: England has not given up anything.
Yes.
What has happened is that the Prime Minister of Barbados, recognizing that with the current with an existing independence order 1966,
Hmm.
the implementation of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals could not take place under the auspices of a British inaugurated constitution.
Yes.
So the constitution had to be suspended and a fraudulent republic formed in order to make sure that everything that the EU, the UN, and the World Economic Forum wanted done could be put in place in the absence of a constitution.
I got you.
There
But
you go.
Britain still has her hand on Barbados, you would say, because you have a lot of settlers there. Aren't there lots of
That
British
has
settlers?
settlers have nothing to do with it, Andrew.
Yeah, it
Settlers
doesn't
have
have
nothing to
anything.
do with
So
it.
what would you
The city,
explain
the
the
city
difference?
of
Yeah, go ahead.
the city of London, which is the financial arm that controls the United States, controls Europe, controls
Hmm.
most of the world. City of London. This is a separate enclave, exists in the actual London city itself, the City of
Hmm.
London financial structure.
Hmm.
And for those of your audience who would like more information on the City of London, please go to YouTube and type into the search "the spider's web." That
Mm.
explains everything about the City of London, the subversion, the coercion, the corruption that happens in Caribbean and African countries across the world. Okay. At the end
Yes.
of the day, the City of London controls the financial structure of Barbados because Barbados has dual taxation treaties. We
Hmm.
have we have tax haven facilities here in this country, and in addition to that, we have one of the largest foreign divestment agencies on the island, in addition to a massive offshore company registration, up to and including private military contractors
Mm.
registered in Barbados. And one of the most notorious of that was Blackwater.
Are they Americans or British? British?
Blackwater is an American
Correct.
private military contractor, and they
Hmm.
formed a shell company in Barbados called Greystone.
Hmm.
Greystone is the front company that is used in Barbados
Hmm.
for Caribbean operations in support of State Department as well as British authorized operations. However, one of the other most important private military contractors in the Caribbean region, in full view of everyone, is G4S. G4S
Yes.
is one of the largest private military contractors in the world, and they're responsible for probably about 35% of the arms trafficking in the Western Hemisphere.
Wow. Incredible, incredible. Now, Fred, in spite of Motley's authoritarian tendencies in Barbados, why is she still idolized around the world? From Kingston to Port of Spain, from Port of Spain to Accra, Miss Motley is greatly beloved and viewed as a symbol of a liberator for people in the global south. Why? How has she been able to amass this electrifying and cultic adoration of a critical mass from the peoples of the global south? What would you say? What would be the response?
Well, you just hit the nail on the head. A cultic response.
Yes.
That's the operative word right there. If
Yes.
you have a socially conditioned population that is brainwashed to believe that eloquent speaking, as well as massive amounts of money to support your own um, generic operations in putting your version of the truth out there for people to lap up in support of a global machination to confuse and derail public opinion, then
Mhm.
you will be viewed as a liberator. You will be viewed
Yes.
as someone who is to be admired. And this is
Correct.
the culture, this is the culture that the British colonial imperial system has divided and kept the Caribbean region in a stranglehold for the last 400 years.
Mhm.
So having someone to come along and do the dirty work is, everything you have there. And the thing is, one of the most important things to recognize here, Andrew, is that when the consciousness of a people can be raised by social engineering to believe themselves to be inferior,
Yes.
the control machination of colonial power can be installed in any one of them to lead the population to destruction.
Correct. Correct.
So that is what you see in Mia Mottley.
In Mia Mottley, yeah, yeah. Now, how can Barbadians stop what Mia Mottley is doing? Isn't this a global trend? And how can we fight these monstrous globalists, most of whom work behind the scenes? Isn't Mia Mottley just the symptom of the problem? Should she be dethroned in the next election? Won't this surveillance and wiretapping thing continue?
Well, as I said in my podcast last Saturday morning on 246BajamVibesRadio.com, for those of you who are
Yes.
would be interested in tuning into my podcast on Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., you can
Can
just
you also send me the link to Fred that I can put it in the description when I'm posting the video?
sure, no problem. So any one of our audience, you go to your browser and type in 246 Bajan Vibes,
Mhm.
Bajan Vibes, VIBES .com, sorry, radio.com,
Mhm.
246BajanVibesRadio.com. In my last podcast on last Saturday, I outlined to the public of the Caribbean that this particular interception of communications bill that the Prime Minister has put in place that usurps the rights of the people to freedom of speech as well as the freedom of expression and privacy will be democratic as well as electoral suicide for the Barbados Labour Party.
Mhm.
It's over. It's over. The public is not going to put up with this. And if they do, it would only be because their financial situation can be directly interdicted. And that is precisely the means by which this interception of communications bill has been put in place. This has nothing to do with crime. Nothing to do with crime.
Yes.
Crime is a side alley that
Mhm.
this can contribute to.
Mhm.
This is controlling the banking sector,
Mhm.
where every single transaction you do online, your bank account can be interdicted. You can be shut down if your credit score is not correct. If you are consuming too much food that they don't like, your carbon score can go off the scale. They can lock you out of society as long as you have a digital ID and a bank account. That's
Yes.
it. And your phone can become your assassin if you are in the position of being too much of a nuisance.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
That that is what the communication interception act or bill or interception of communications bill is all about. It is about implementing via deception and Hegelian dialectic the most important control mechanism of a population, and that is financial control. That is precisely what that is. And there is no one that can come on this platform or any other platform and argue against that point simply because we already have the evidence that is so. There we go.
Now, how can we stop it?
Non-compliance. Simple. Non-compliance. One of the most important and forceful things that the public of Barbados can do right now is to sit down, as I've said in my podcast, and I've already drafted a draft document that I will be sending to everyone in the Caribbean who are part of my contacts, a non-compliance letter to the Prime Minister's office that we will not comply with this. We will go into the banks and we will withdraw all of our money. We will close our bank accounts and we will find bank accounts elsewhere.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yes.
And as the public probably is well aware, I am currently a member of the new National Party of Barbados
Mhm.
and will be representing the parish of St. Lucie. And one of the core competencies of doing that is to establish a new bank in Barbados, which will reestablish the Barbados National Bank, where the sovereign nationals of Barbados can move their bank accounts from a controlled environment into a free banking
Environment.
sector.
Now that this is so interesting, Fred, that it is almost frightening to say. But there's something I want to say that the fact that we have cell phones, we have computers, we are connected to the internet. Are we really free? Is it that
No,
we are complicitly also allowing them to surveil us?
yes, and the reason that this has a very long gestation period. We have been we have been wooed, we have been led, we have been coerced. We have been offered gifts. We have been patted on the back and given all sorts of pleasantries in order to secure our attention and make a device become the central and core issue
And
of our entire
convenience.
lives.
Yes. And
This
yes.
this is the new marriage certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the new marriage certificate. We're no
Yes.
longer interested in marrying a beautiful woman to
Yes.
build a to build a family or anything. We are
Yes.
married to the devices.
Correct.
Okay, and the most important thing that we have to remember is that in that marriage, only one person wins, and that is the outside man. In that
Mm.
marriage, the only person that wins is the outside man. And you know who that outside
Mm.
man is? The government.
That's deep.
And the government has no interest in anything that you or your new wife or spouse has to say, simply because they control your direction, they control your decisions because you have made the conscious decision to marry this.
Yes.
And this is where non-compliance comes in, because the consciousness within the spiritual body needs to be completely readjusted to divorce yourself from that era, from that mechanism, from that device. Carry out the divorce, okay? Divorce yourself from that, use it for what it can only provide with regard to communication, and divorce yourself from everything that seeks to control your life. And the
Yes.
reason I say that is this: if you allow the marriage of a device, which is controlled by artificial intelligence, to subvert your consciousness, you are living a life in denial of the spiritual dwelling of God within. And we
Yeah.
don't ever want to go there.
Yes. Yes. And with that, we can then end this very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for joining again, Fred Corbin. And I look
You're
forward
welcome.
to discussing another important topic in another discussion. See you. Thank you so much and have a great
Thank
night.
you. Thank
Okay.
you, Andrew.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Wow, that was an interesting sort of conversation with Fred Corbin about what is happening in Barbados, which has solid implications for those of us who live in other parts of the Caribbean region. But we have to understand that to some extent we are complicit with what is happening because, as Fred suggested, we have given over our rights to these governments. We have bought into having these convenience or convenient, technological devices, gadgets, whatever you want to call them, which are really enslaving us. We're married to them, as Fred has so articulately suggested. Now, what do we do? As Fred is suggesting, we have to be non-compliant and we have to say no to whatever laws that they are trying to craft and to implement. So I want to thank you again for joining this very important discussion. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. And those of you who would like to make your monetary contribution, you can leave it at my PayPal. You can direct all payments to my PayPal account, and that is Andy_Tucker underscore 450@hotmail.com. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you in another one. Ciao.